Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, early voting for next week's by-elections is now underway. Polling stations will remain open for the next 2 days. The government launches a $25 billion stimulus package to revive the sluggish economy. President Park says more needs to be done to boost growth and employment. First, a passenger plane carrying 116 people is missing, feared crashed on a flight from Burkina Faso to the Algerian capital Algiers. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, July 25th. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, early voting has just begun for the July 30th by-elections. Those eligible voters who wish to cast their ballots ahead of the actual election day can do so between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. today, Friday and Saturday. The turnout in by-elections is typically pretty low in Korea, but the National Election Commission expects the early voter turnout to reach around 6%. However, officials say it could be a bit higher because 15 parliamentary seats are on the line this time around, a record amount, in fact, for a by-election here in Korea. According to election law, as of this Friday, media outlets are now barred from revealing any new public opinion polls on the by-elections. Staying on the by-elections, two opposition candidates in the July 30th by-elections withdrew on Thursday in a bid to merge the voting blocs of Liberal voters. Candidate Ki Dong-min of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy stepped down from the running for Seoul's Dongjak-B district. This in order to boost the opposition bloc's chances of winning against a pretty strong ruling Saenuri Party candidate Na Kyung-won, who will now run against the Justice Party candidate No Hae-chan. In Suwon D constituency, Chon Ho-sun of the Justice Party made way for the New Politics Alliance for Democracy candidate Park Kwang-on to take on the ruling party's Im Tae-hee. Now, it's a very big day in regards to the Sewol-ho ferry investigation because the National Forensic Service will announce the results of its autopsy on Yoo Byung-on, the owner of the ferry operator, in just a few hours' time. The State Forensic Agency, which has been running tests on the corpse since receiving it on Tuesday, is poised to unveil the cause of Yoo's death, be it murder, suicide, or perhaps even natural causes. They're going to reveal this at 10 a.m. Korea time, so just under 4 hours away. The agency is also set to announce the results from drug and toxicology tests taken from Yoo's extremely badly decomposed body. Yoo Byung-on, who disappeared shortly after the ferry disaster, was found dead last month in an orchard in southwestern Korea. Now, a UN panel is urging Japan to provide a public apology and compensation to the victims of its wartime system of sex slavery. The UN Human Rights Committee said Thursday that, after reviewing the records of several countries, it's very concerned about the re-victimization of the former sex slavery victims. The panel criticized Japan for continuously denying its responsibility and even defaming the now very elderly victims, rather than taking the necessary steps to actually help them. The committee, made up of 18 independent experts, also noted that every compensation claim brought by the victims has been dismissed, and every call for an independent investigation on the sex slavery issue has been rejected by Japan. Now, President Park Geun-hye is expected to sit down with the governor of Tokyo in Seoul on this Friday upon his request. Governor Yoichi Masujoe is in Seoul on a 3-day trip aimed at thawing the very frosty ties between Korea and Japan through so-called, what he says, city-to-city diplomacy. Now, bilateral relations remain extremely tense and at a very low ebb amid historical and territorial differences between the two countries. Today's meeting will be the first one-on-one between President Park and a Japanese politician since she took office early last year, so a very significant meeting. The Korean president has yet to meet alone with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who reportedly told the Tokyo governor before he left for Seoul about his desire to improve relations with Korea. Now, South Korea's small and medium-sized businesses are considering investing in a new economic free trade zone in North Korea. They're hoping to build another joint industrial complex like the one there is currently in Kaesong, but they are setting their sights further north. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
The Korea Federation of Small and Medium Business announced Thursday that it's considering building an industrial complex in North Korea's Najin-Sonbong Free Trade Economic Regions. Federation Chairman Kim Ki-moon said at a policy forum in China on Thursday that at the request of Korea's small and medium-sized firms, the group is currently reviewing plans. The new complex will likely be similar to the Inter-Korean Industrial Park located in Kaesong, which currently stands as the prototype for economic integration between the two Koreas and a symbol of possible reunification. Chairman Kim said the project, dubbed the Second Kaesong Industrial Complex, is looking to build on 3.3 million square meters of land at a suitable location near the Najin-Sonbong development regions, since it is close to the borders of China and Russia. The Business Federation says it plans on making a trip to North Korea in the near future to meet with officials and discuss further ideas on investment and developments for a potential deal. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, Korea's new economic team, led by the new finance minister, Choi Kyung-hwan, unveiled a $40 billion stimulus plan on Thursday. This in the hope of breathing new life into the sputtering Korean economy. The finance ministry will also slap taxes on corporate cash reserves in an attempt to coax companies into spending more and boosting the economy. Hwang Jie reports.
Korea's new economic team is all geared up to shake the country out of its low-growth rut. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said Thursday that the government will seek aggressive fiscal policies that will boost spending by some 12 trillion won, or roughly $11 billion in the second half of this year. The government will also set aside around $28 billion in loans and funds to promote corporate activities.
To solve structural problems the economy is now facing and to maintain fiscal balance in the long term, it's critical to seek expansionary fiscal and monetary policies, even at the risk of running a short-term fiscal deficit.
Choi says the earnings of local exporters are not flowing into households, which is stifling domestic demand. To address the issue, the government laid out plans to provide tax incentives to companies that raise wages and increase dividend payments.
Korean companies' dividend payout ratio is the lowest among OECD nations. That's affecting the local capital market and keeping corporate earnings from flowing into households.
The government, on the other hand, will tax companies that shy away from investment wage increases or dividend payments in favor of hanging on to excessive cash reserves. The government also plans to accelerate regulatory reforms, especially those linked to bolstering the nation's real estate market by giving homebuyers easier access to mortgage loans. The set of measures is based on the new economic team's revised growth outlook for this year. It cut its growth forecast to 3.7%, down 0.4 percentage points from an earlier projection. The government says that the key to getting the economy back in a full recovery phase is boosting domestic demand, which was hit hard by the ferry tragedy in April. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
And President Park Geun-hye has made reviving the local economy her key agenda as well for the second half of this year. And she's particularly focused on a method that doesn't really cost any extra money, that is slashing red tape. Our Choi Yu-sun reports.
During Thursday's economic ministerial meeting, President Park highlighted the need to cut through red tape that has been deterring domestic investment. The president said a task force should be established to remove unnecessary regulations to create jobs, specifically in medicine, tourism, and finance.
규제 개혁 건의 하나하나를 규제 개혁 종합 포털을 통해서 국민과 함께 실시간으로 관리하고 국민들이 그만하면 됐다, 이제 체감이 된다 할 때까지 악착같이 물고 늘어져야 합니다.
Referring to a delay in removing a mandatory electronic identity verification for online transactions, President Park urged officials not to be confined to the Korean market, but to look beyond its borders and come up with a simpler online transaction system for foreign consumers. Positively assessing the government's measures to spur domestic demand, the president said corporate achievements should lead to an increase in household income. On public sector reforms, President Park talked about removing each organization's excessive functions to bring down their debt. And with national safety one of the government's top priorities since the ferry tragedy, the president asked her economic advisors to prepare a plan to foster safety-related industries.
이것도 하나의 시장이고 수요가 여기에서 창출이 된다. 이런 방식으로 접근을 할 때 안전도 지켜지고 또 그것도 하나의 경제의 보탬이 되는 방향으로 나아갈 수 있지 않을까 이렇게 생각을 하고 있습니다.
As for a new economic team, the president asked ministers to unite in coordinating their policies to improve the livelihood of the Korean people. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's SK Hynix, which is the world's second biggest memory chip maker, says its second quarter net profit tumbled nearly 30% from a year ago on falling memory chip prices. For more on this story, Connie Lee reports.
It was the first drop in quarterly profit in 2 years. Korea's SK Hynix, the world's second biggest memory chip maker, said Thursday that its second quarter net profit fell nearly 30% from a year ago. Their net profit came to about 674 billion won, or about $658 million US dollars. The company blames the drop on its corporate bonds or irregular expenses arising from its past bond issues. Its operating profit, which does not take into account these irregular expenses, fell less than 3%, signaling the recent net profit fall as an exception. Analysts say good market conditions and increasing demand for memory chips will help the company in the next quarter and in the long run.
The decline in the net profit is an exceptional case. The company's third quarter earnings are expected to improve in light of new products planned by mobile manufacturers and the growing demand for personal computers.
New mobile products like the highly anticipated iPhone 6 from Apple, a major SK Hynix client, is just one example. Both the company and analysts see a firm market demand and expect a much better performance in the coming quarter. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And staying on the earnings front for the nation's biggest companies, Hyundai Motors' operating profit for the second quarter dropped by more than 13% on year to $2.8 billion US. The company said this was mainly due to the rather unfavorable exchange rates, the strong Korean won. Korea's top steelmaker POSCO said its operating profit dropped 7% on year, totaling $816 million. POSCO cited the overall drop in prices of steel products. On the other hand, LG Electronics did much better, reporting an operating profit of nearly $590 million. That's up more than 26% on year. This on the back of a strong performance of its mobile and TV units. The company shipped a record 14 million smartphones during the second quarter. That's up 20% on year, and that's largely thanks to its new high-end G3 smartphone. Okay, it's time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Friday morning. For that, as always, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark. A dark week for the aviation industry. The search is on for Air Algier flight that disappeared last night carrying 116 people. Early reports just coming into our newsroom. Reuters reporting Mali's president has said plane wreckage has been spotted in Mali's desert north. Now, 2 French fighter jets, among other aircraft, have been scouring northern Mali for the missing MD-83. It disappeared less than an hour into its flight from Burkina Faso to the Algerian capital of Algiers. It was feared to have crashed after falling off of radar contact over the Sahara amid reported bad weather. The Air Algier flight was being operated by a Spanish airline, Swift Air, which owns the plane. On board were more than 50 French, along with 27 Burkina Faso nationals, as well as passengers from a dozen other countries. 2 military aircraft carrying 74 more caskets have arrived at Eindhoven military base in the Netherlands Thursday. It came one day after the first 40 remains of the victims of Flight 17 landed to a military honor guard and transported for forensic identification. This as human remains continue to be found in the crash zone a full week after the plane was presumably shot down by pro-Russian rebels. Australian and Dutch diplomats joined to push a plan that would have a UN team secure the crash site, which has been controlled by pro-Russian rebels. All 298 people aboard Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 were killed, most of them Dutch citizens, when that plane was shot down on July 17th. Now, at least 15 people are dead after Israeli forces shelled a UN school being used as a shelter for Palestinians in Gaza. Pools of blood were spotted in the school's courtyard. Among the dead were UN staff. It was the 4th time in 4 days that a UN facility had been hit. The Israeli Defense Forces said it was reviewing the incident and explained that it had been engaged in combat with Hamas terrorists in the area of Beit Hanun, who are using civilian infrastructure and international symbols as human shields. Officials say more than 750 Palestinians and 33 Israelis have been killed in the past 16 days of fighting. One day after it cut the economic outlook for the U.S. economy, the International Monetary Fund has slashed its global growth forecast for 2014 as well. It said the world economy should expand by 3.4% this year, down 0.3% from its April forecast. The fund cited weaker growth in the U.S., China, as well as several key emerging markets for this move. In its quarterly update, it said global growth could be weaker for longer, given the lack of robust momentum in advanced economies despite very low interest rates and the easing of other brakes to the recovery. It urgently called for both advanced and emerging market governments to adapt structural reforms that would make their economies more competitive.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with domestic football, as the KFA completed their first step in their rebuilding process by hiring a new technical committee director. And his 55-year-old Lee Young-soo was actually the technical committee director back during the 2002 Korea-Japan World Cup. But after 12 years, Lee, who was also a television analyst, will use his previous experience to rebuild the South Korean national football team. And his first challenge will be selecting a new head coach for the national team. And now staying with football, quite a treat for all the football fans here in Korea, as the 2014 K-League All-Star Game will take place later tonight. And of course, they'll also be able to catch several legends at the game as well. Now, with the K-League All-Star Game taking place at the Seoul World Cup Stadium, it'll be the K-League All-Stars taking on Team Park Ji-sung, as the former national team captain will play for one last time in front of his fans. And while another legend in Lee Young-pyo will play alongside Park Ji-sung for one final time, legendary head coach Gus Hynix will be on hand to coach Team Park Ji-sung as well. Meanwhile, the All-Star Game will kick off at 8 p.m. And now moving over to Formula One racing, where it seems like the Korean Grand Prix returning to the 2015 F1 schedule is in doubt after another nation is set to return. With Mexico signing a new deal that will have them host the Mexico Grand Prix for the first time in 23 years starting 2015, this leaves the Korean Grand Prix in doubt for the 2015 Formula One season. But also with 3 to 5 more nations possibly joining next season, this leaves Korea out of contention with the kind of financial setbacks they suffered from 2010 to 2013. And speaking of speed, we shift over to the South Korean speed skating team as the ISU announced that they have hired a new head coach to lead the team. And why not hire a coach from a nation that's known for speed skating, right? Well, now they have Erik Bouwman from the Netherlands to coach the South Korean national team after the ISU announced that they've hired the former Dutch junior team head coach. Now, he's been named the top 5 best speed skating coach in the Netherlands for the past 5 straight years and led the junior nationals team to 8 gold medals and 21 medals overall during the World Juniors Championships this past March. And now finishing things off with some Thursday night KBO action. The LG Twins win one over the Kia Tigers 6-2 with the SK Wyverns shutting out the Tusan Bears 7-0, and the Samsung Lions crushed the Lotte Giants 17-1. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the NC Dinos take on the Hanwha Eagles. Now, right off the bat, the first inning, Na Sung-bum with an RBI double to right center gives the NC Dinos the 1-0 lead before Kwon Hee-dong makes it 2-0 with an RBI double of his own. But it's this play here, Mo Chang-min at bat with a 3-run shot, capping a 5-run first inning for the NC Dinos. But wait a minute, bottom of the inning, red-hot Kim Tae-won, a 3-run shot of his own makes it 5-3 here before Choi Jin-heng at bat adds this solo shot to make it 5-4 after the first inning. And what looked to be a close game all throughout, NC just absolutely kills it on the offense, scoring 23 runs off of Hanwha pitching as they win big 23-9. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good Friday morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-yeon with your weather updates. Well, heavy rain advisory was lifted in Seoul and Incheon area, but some regions up north is still receiving heavy showers this morning. And for today, it's forecast to rain throughout the day across the regions. So a monsoon front will bring up more showers, more heavy rain that is, to northern parts of the peninsula, while southern regions should see a mix of sun and hot temperatures as the heat wave advisory is still in place for many regions like Daegu and Ulsan. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 24 and the high will rise to 29, while Daegu and Gwangju should see a high of 32 and 31 respectively, and Busan will top out at 29 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island will peak at 32, Daejeon will rise to 31, while Dokdo and Mong, Gyeongang should see a high of 28 and 20 respectively. Well, get ready for another rainy and hot day today. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today with Young Kim and Kim Min-jung and Oh Jin-ju is coming up in about half an hour's time. Looking forward to that. And we'll be back throughout the day with more news updates. And I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.